Elias Thorne lived a life of glass and steel, transparent, cold, and meticulously designed. As a world-renowned architect, he believed that if you followed the blueprints, nothing could ever truly fall apart. But life isn't a technical drawing. The collapse didn't happen all at once. It was a slow erosion that ended in a deafening roar. First, a structural flaw in his flagship project led to a public disgrace. Then came the silence of a home where his wife's laughter used to echo, now replaced by the chilling finality of divorce papers on a marble countertop. Standing in his penthouse, surrounded by awards that felt like tombstones, Elias realized he was an architect who couldn't support his own weight. The man who designed skylines couldn't even look at the horizon without feeling a crushing vertigo. His hands, once steady enough to draw the finest lines, now trembled at the simple task of pouring a glass of water. He wasn't just unemployed or alone, he was structurally unsound. Every pillar of his identity, his ego, his wealth, his reputation, had crumbled into a fine, suffocating dust. He stood amidst the ruins of a decade, realizing that the most beautiful buildings are often the most fragile. As he packed a single bag, leaving behind the gleaming towers of the city, he looked in the mirror and didn't recognize the hollowed-out man staring back. He had spent his life building upward, but now he was headed for the dirt. The cabin was a skeleton of rot and memories, perched on a jagged ridge far from the city's judgmental hum. It had belonged to his grandfather, a man who built things to last, not things to be admired. For Elias, the silence of the woods was more deafening than the roar of the construction sites. He spent the first week in a catatonic haze, sitting on a porch that groaned under his weight. He watched the mold creep up the walls, seeing it as a reflection of his own internal decay. In the city, he was an award winner. Here, he was just a man shivering in a drafty room with a leaky roof. The psychological toll was a heavy physical pressure. He tried to sketch, but his charcoal pencils felt like lead bars. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the headlines and the cold, empty space in the bed where his wife used to be. The isolation stripped away his last defenses. He wasn't just grieving a career. He was grieving the version of himself he had spent 40 years constructing. One evening, as a storm rattled the loose window panes, Elias found himself screaming into the wind, a raw, guttural sound that no blueprint could ever contain. He realized that before he could build anything new, he had to confront the terrifying reality of being absolutely nothing. As the rain began to pour through a hole in the ceiling, soaking his last clean shirt, Elias stared at the puddle forming on the floor. He had two choices: drown in the wreckage or find a tool. The following morning, Elias found himself at a local salvage yard, a graveyard of rusted iron and weathered timber. It was there he met Silas, an elderly man with hands like gnarled oak roots. Silas didn't care about Elias's portfolio or the skyscrapers that bore his name. He only cared about the quality of the wood. "Most people see trash," Silas said, running a thumb over a scarred beam. "I see character. The wood that survived the fire is always the densest." This simple observation hit Elias with the force of a wrecking ball. He realized he had spent his life valuing the pristine, the new, and the unbroken, while completely ignoring the strength found in survival. Elias bought a set of basic hand tools, no laser levels, no digital renderings. Back at the cabin, the work was grueling. His soft architect's hands blistered and bled as he tore out the water-damaged floorboards. Every swing of the hammer was an exorcism of his past failures. He stopped thinking about grand designs and focused entirely on the grain of the wood and the weight of the stone.
For the first time in years, the noise in his head fell silent, replaced by the rhythmic thud-thud of a man reclaiming his own territory. He wasn't just fixing a floor, he was setting a foundation that didn't rely on the world's applause. Late one night, as he smoothed a piece of reclaimed cedar, he discovered something tucked beneath the old floorboards, a rusted metal box containing letters written by his grandfather, revealing a secret struggle that mirrored his own.
The letters revealed that the cabin hadn't been a summer retreat, but a sanctuary built after his grandfather lost everything in the Great Depression. The words, ink-faded but defiant, spoke of a man who found his dignity not in his bank account, but in the calluses on his palms. Elias felt a profound tether to the past, a realization that his bloodline was forged in recovery. But just as he began to feel a sense of equilibrium, the outside world clawed its way back in. A sleek black sedan navigated the muddy track to the cabin. It was his former partner, Sarah, carrying a thick contract and an air of polished urgency. "The board has cleared you, Elias," she said, her voice sounding alien against the chirping of cicadas. "The structural failure was traced back to a supplier's negligence. Your name is clean. We have a commission for a new museum in London. It's the comeback of the century." Elias looked at his hands, stained with walnut oil and dirt, and then at the high-gloss blueprints Sarah rolled out on his workbench. The London project was everything he used to crave: prestige, power, and the chance to erase his shame. But as he looked at the designs, they felt hollow, like cages of glass designed to trap the soul. He stood at a crossroads. He could return to the life that had nearly destroyed him, or stay in the woods with a half-finished cabin and an uncertain future. Sarah left the contract on the table, giving him 24 hours to decide. That night, Elias sat by the hearth he had just rebuilt, the silence of the forest weighing heavier than any skyscraper. The morning sun bled through the pines, illuminating the contract on the workbench. Elias picked up the heavy, expensive paper, a ticket back to the life he had once worshipped. He thought of the London skyline, the flash bulbs and the polished marble. Then he looked at the cabin. It wasn't perfect. The beams were scarred and the stones were uneven, but it was honest. It was a structure that didn't hide its repairs. It celebrated them. With a steady hand, Elias didn't sign the contract. Instead, he used the back of it to sketch a design for a community center for the local village, a building made of local stone and heart. He walked Sarah to her car and handed back the unsigned papers. "I'm not coming back," he said simply. "I finally learned how to build something that won't fall down when the wind changes." As the car disappeared, Elias felt a lightness he hadn't known since childhood. He spent the next month finishing the cabin. He left the cracks in the grandfather's old fireplace visible, filling them with a gold-colored resin, a nod to the art of kintsugi, finding beauty in the broken. The broken man was gone. In his place stood someone forged in the quiet and the dirt. Elias Thorne realized that life doesn't break us to destroy us. It breaks us to strip away the vanity, leaving behind a foundation of pure, unbreakable truth. He sat on his porch, a master architect of his own soul, finally home.